Good morning, Hornets. My name is Dylan Hackbarth. I am one of the counselors at Edina High School. Today we are joining you to talk about the college application process and other things relevant to the class of 2021. I'm going to introduce some of my colleagues who are presenting with me today, starting with Ms. Nikki Plafkin.
Hi everyone, as he said, my name is Nikki Plafkin and I am the counselor for 12th graders, alphabet A through BR.
Next up, I'm going to introduce you to Mr. Bill Hicks.
Hello, seniors. Welcome. I'm a new face, but actually I'm old new counselor. I'm taking over for Miss Kiefer, and Miss Kiefer moved to a 9th grade position. We kind of changed things a little bit in our department, and I am taking over for her. I know I've got big shoes to fill, but I'm hope to be able to help you out during this process like she would. So welcome. I have students in the letters BU through EC, and I really look forward to working with you over the course of this year.
And finally, I'm going to introduce you to our last presenter today, Mr. Taylor Johnson.
Hey seniors, good to see you again. I'm working with the alphabet ED through HAU.
And from there, we'll kick off our presentation. I want you to know there is a chat on our YouTube page. If you have questions, we'll have a little bit of time at the end where we can answer general questions, so feel free to drop them in the chat. Otherwise, take it away.
All right, thanks, Mr. Hackbarth. Really appreciate you and all the work that you have done over the course of the past summer, getting this prepared and so forth, as well as Ms. Plapkin and Mr. Johnson. We know that seniors have been busy. I know school hasn't even started, and a lot of you have already got some ideas in regards to what your college. But to begin with, we thought it would be kind of interesting and kind of fun to get an idea of some past data of where some previous classes, specifically last year's class, where did those kids apply to schools and where did they end up? So to begin with, we want to take a look at some student outcomes from last year. If you notice, on the left-hand column, it shows where the top 10 most schools where kids applied to from the senior class last year. But more importantly, where did they matriculate to is on the right-hand side. And you'll obviously see the #1 school, both in applications as well as where kids attended, is the University of Minnesota. What's interesting is if you look at the application rates, more than half of our senior class applied to the U. Now, does that mean that you have to apply to the University of Minnesota? No. This is just to give you an idea of typically where our students from Edina High School have applied to in the past. One of the things I want to point out to all of you is if you look at the top 10 where students attended, look at the #2 school of where that last year's seniors matriculated to, and that's Normandale, and which has been historically in the top 3 over the past 5 years. And many people think that, oh, it's because that kids can't get in anywhere, but that's not the case. We've seen an increase in kids going to school at a community college, and the #1 reason is cost, that they can save money attending school, going to a community college for at least 1 year or potentially 2 years, and then transferring. Now, we'll talk a little bit later on and potentially individually in regards to the transfer process, but it is something that many seniors do look at as an option, and it's a very good option. Going back to the total number of applications and some student outcomes from the past years. No, you can move forward, Mr. Hackbarth. We appreciate it. But one thing you'll notice from this is that the majority of our kids go out of state. So, but that doesn't mean that they go, from Alaska to Florida to Massachusetts or whatever. A lot of kids do attend the Midwest. It's very popular. But again, one of the most important things for you when you're looking at schools isn't what previous schools did, but most importantly, find out your fit. That is the most important thing in regards to picking and choosing a school where you end up. the more research, the more knowledge that you have of the schools at this present time, the better the decision will be. And ultimately, what we want you to do is to have choice when it comes to decision making, roughly in April and before May 1st. So these are some numbers to give you just a general idea of where kids have attended, specifically last year's class. We have almost 50% going to private schools. So you're seeing public, private, small, big, whatever, community college, technical college. Our kids go everywhere. And so that's something that you can consider as well. But what we want you to do, most importantly, is in regards to your choice, is make sure that you do your research and you get a good fit. Your criteria might be different than others, and that's okay. But make sure that you do the work. I'm going to turn it over to finding your right fit, and I think that's Ms. Plafkin.
Yeah, hi again. So he introduced it very well. First, I also want to just take a time to say congratulations for getting to where you are. Everything you've done and all of your hard work up to this point led you here. And so we just want to make sure that you know that you find a college that it suits you and is right fit for you. So whether that's the military, taking a gap year, going to work, perhaps a 2-year school, 4-year school, community college, like we are here to help you as counselors and to provide you with those resources and just to find that fit for you. So going forward, again, your right fit. So you want to be realistic. So you guys all know yourself more than any of us would. So you know yourself socially, emotionally, and be sure to check in with your family financially too to kind of find that right place for you. You all do have the ability and can get into a college. And again, we will be here to help you, to support you, find resources, and then find those colleges to fit. You have to find the place that is best for you, where you can learn and continue your passions. So this isn't about the name that's on your sweatshirt. It's not about impressing anybody else. Again, I just want to reiterate so many times that this is about you and finding that fit for you, because your college choice, again, is going to be about you and your path and your journey and your future. So if we look at the Navia, it's on our EHS website under class of 2021. Students, you've already probably have seen this. This is going to be the hub of all the resources. Seniors, if you want to take a look too, if you notice, it's under my planner and on tasks. So please be sure to look over your 11th grade advisory curriculum to help you find some of those college planning tools that we've helped you with, including strategies to explore and discover your right fit. We will go through Navient more in detail throughout the presentation, but I just wanted to point that one out for you. And now we have Mr. Johnson.
Hey, seniors. So I'm going to take just a couple minutes to talk about college application definitions and strategies. I know this might be a little familiar to some of you, but it's a really important topic because it influences the process and how you might apply to schools. So the first admission decision we're going to talk about is early decision. So Ms. Plafkin, if we want to go to the next slide, early decision is important because it's a binding agreement. So a binding agreement means you are going to use early decision to only apply to one school if you decide to. Historically, I'd say the students I work with, probably less than 10% of them ever decide to use early decision. It's both something that you, your parent or guardian, and actually your counselor have to sign. So what you're saying is, this is my #1 school. If I apply to that school, I'm going to go to that school. Early decision, and you get accepted to that school, you are then going to withdraw your applications from your other schools. So Ms. P just talked about fit a little bit. If I was looking at doing an early decision school, it would be like my #1 academic fit, social fit, financial fit. I would have thought this through and realized, like, yeah, this is it. And I think a lot of you probably aren't there yet, and that's fine. There are so many great ways to apply to schools. The benefit of applying early decision is you apply early and you typically hear back early. A lot of times that's in December of the admission cycle. Some schools will have ED1 and ED2. If you have really specific questions, that's a great conversation to have with your counselor once school gets started. And again, this would be used for if you have a first choice school that stands out. Oftentimes admissions decisions might really consider this interest you're demonstrating in them. And oftentimes this might help you get into that school, that's also not a reason to apply ED. ED is really because it's your #1 school. So moving on from ED, we're going to talk a little about early action. So the similarity is you apply early, you hear back early. This is non-binding though, so you can apply to as many early action schools as you want. Typically, we see early action schools, their admissions application deadlines around November 1st, December 1st. You typically hear back sometime in January or February, depending on the year. You can apply to as many other colleges under regular decision, early action, and some of them have multiple early action deadlines as well. So moving on here, there's just a couple more to briefly talk about, and that is going to be, if you don't mind switching the slide, going to be regular admissions, rolling admissions, and open admission. Regular admission, there's typically just a solid date, and you hear back by a specific date as well. It might be that the regular decision deadline is in December, in January, or in February. And then they have a set date that you hear back that could be in March. Rolling admissions gives admission decisions throughout the admission cycle. Some schools have really quick turnarounds. Some, they might be several weeks. And then open admissions, all high school graduates who apply are admitted. Oftentimes, we might reference Normandale Community College as one example of this. So that's kind of the quick terms, and then your strategies kind of go after that. So I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Hackbarth for the next part.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Now we want to take a little time to talk about what matters to colleges. This is a question that as counselors we are asked quite often. What will matter to that school if I have another extracurricular, or if I have a letter of recommendation that really is fire? Like, how will that impact my admission? So I want to share with you some information and then give you a really helpful resource that will help you kind of see behind the curtain in terms of what matters at individual colleges. First, the National Association for College Admissions Counseling does a survey every couple of years where they ask colleges what do they consider heaviest while admitting students. And a typical year, it would be 3 things: strength of high school curriculum, your overall grade point average, like your performance in your school-based curriculum. So we've got rigor, performance, and then in previous years, often what would come back in that data would be test scores. Given the situation we're in and the number of schools that are going either test flexible, test optional, or completely test blind, meaning that if you even send a test score, they won't read it, we're going to keep the test scores off because it is so nuanced and it is changing so fast. Every day we're hearing about more and more schools who are dropping their test scores. Or their test requirements. I'm not going to go too much into test scores because I know Mr. Hicks will talk about that in a little later on. Other factors that can be really important to, depending on the school, can be your extracurricular commitment. And extracurricular commitment doesn't mean that you're throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing that you're doing 10 different activities and you're loading up your senior year. Extracurricular commitment can really mean that you've chosen 1 or 2 activities and you've seen them through. You've grown in your capacity and you've become a really big leader within that extracurricular. Let me see how many times I can say that. Another factor that many schools are looking at is going to be your essay, letters of recommendation, and demonstrated interest. And that can look kind of different depending on the school. Let's go on to the next page here. And I want to share this really handy resource. This is a website called collegedata.com. Most colleges every year will submit information through a survey called the Common Data Set. It's a big old survey about 70 pages long on most schools' websites, where they kind of share behind the curtain peek about what they think is most important as they're admitting students, both first year students, freshmen on campuses, and transfer students. So rather than looking at the common data set for every school, College Data aggregates that information for you. So I'm not going to demonstrate it right now, but I did share a link to this presentation with active hyperlinks in the description. On collegedata.com, once you open it up, you can type in a college and then click admissions and scroll down, and it will actually show you what individual schools are considering when looking at their applicants. And there can be quite a big gap in terms of what colleges are looking at. From, take the University of Minnesota to like a St. Olaf, they are considering students very differently, both holistic, but they might place different emphases on different pieces of the actual application. And with that, I am going to hand it over to my colleague, I believe, Mr. Hicks.
Thank you, Mr. Hackbarth. We're going to talk a little bit about college entrance exams, and I'm not going to spend a tremendous amount of time. Part of it is because that in the state that we're in right now, seniors, and maybe some of you have been hearing about this over the course since last March in regards to the COVID situation. A lot of colleges have gone to what's called test optional, meaning that you don't have to send a score if you don't want. I think what I want to do is to spend some time talking a little bit about what Mr. Hackbarth just mentioned in regards to all the other things. Historically, test or college entrance exams had been placed at a small and sometimes, big portion of a student's application. Well, we're seeing a major change in that for you guys and the classes ahead of or behind you. Because of the lack of opportunity, the college entrance exams haven't been placed as much emphasis moving forward. So we know that last year it was difficult for some of you even to take a test, and there might even be seniors right now. Some of you have said, I don't even have a test that I've taken. Don't panic, because that many schools, over 1,000 schools out there, are test optional, meaning that they're saying we don't need a test score to be able to evaluate your application and make a decision. So just throwing out a couple things. First and foremost, the ACT test. Now there's two major exams that we're looking at. There are specifically 6 ACT test dates coming up. For you guys as seniors, I'd probably say that in most cases, it's going to be 2 or 3. Those are the national test dates that are listed there: September, October, December, February, April, and June. And in reality, probably the test are non-existent for you guys. Potentially as late as February could be for some students, but it's the first 3. Now, those are the national test dates on a Saturday at designated sites. I will mention, though, that we are offering, and I do believe that you've had the opportunity to sign up already, for the October 6th date, and that's tentative, just like all of these are, because everything that's kind of fluid right now, what's happening in regards to our educational process. But we do have a standardized test, ACT test, coming up October 6th, and hopefully many of you have signed up for it and you're done doing that. So those are the ACT test dates. We also have the SAT test coming up. There are roughly 4 of those that probably pertain to you. There's a September, October, November, and December test. And again, registration is all online for both the SAT as well as the ACT. The SAT, you have to go to the College Board website, collegeboard.org, and then ACT is act.org. So those are, you have to do on your own. The only thing that I will tell you, if as a senior, you do want your scores to be sent to colleges, it is up to you. It is your responsibility. The school, the high school, we do not send your test scores, access to them, but we do not send them out from the high school itself. That is your responsibility. Here you can see that, some things to remember about testing. As I said before, there's over 1,000 different schools out there, and it's, there's more now than there's ever been before in regards to, giving you the option of not sending a test score. If you don't know whether or not you should send your test score, that's the perfect segue into a discussion with your counselor. You can ask them and they'll give you, a recommendation if they have your test score in your file. But more importantly, as we've mentioned before, it's all those other factors, grades, the classes that you're taking, and even your senior year is extremely important for many schools as well. So that's the emphasis, not so much the test scores. And like I said, the last thing is just to remember, if you do decide to send a test score, it is your responsibility. So I'm going to throw it over to Miss P, I believe, and she's going to take it over.
Nikki, is this one me?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. It's okay, Mr. Hicks. We get it.
Happens when we get old.
Okay, if we're gonna again, this is a live link within the presentation in the description of this video. It's how to get it done at EHS. We're going to start getting into the nuts and bolts of how you do your applications, how you request letters of recommendation, how you request transcripts. But we have this information available in a multitude of ways. But if you access this presentation, it's right there. Why don't you go ahead, Ms. Plefkin? I want to talk about some different types of applications that are available. The first one is an institutional application. Some colleges will only offer an institutional app. So it used to be back in the day that they would offer it through paper. You would mail it in. Nowadays, most colleges will have an institutional application right on their website. To find it, you would go to their website, Penn State, and go to their admissions page and find their application. Move forward, Ms. Plafkin. And then there's also Common Apps. Many schools will subscribe to the Common Application, which is an aggregate for filling out an application and sending it to multiple locations. There are some colleges, like the University of Minnesota, that both offer students the opportunity to apply via Common Application and an institutional application called the Go. So that gives students a lot of control to determine how they want to actually apply. Typically, how I would advise a student is if they're applying to multiple colleges that are on Common Application, and those schools also offer institutional applications, you're going to get more bang for your buck or save your time if you fill out the Common App and apply that way. But if you're just going to apply to one school and they offer an institutional app, it would probably make more sense to do just their institutional app. It's kind of, you have a buffet of options ahead of you. Yes, and with that, I'm going to hand it on over.
All right, so just kind of following up with what Mr. Hackbarth said is, one thing that the Common App does have is a really nice grid that shows the different requirements like teacher letters of rec, counselor letter of recs, and other basic requirements that they have. Linked right now is what the requirements were for last year. We're hoping that Common App updates that grid for us in the next couple of weeks. But in each of your dashboards on the Common App, you can access all that information for what is required. So what I'm going to do right now is we're really going to jump into the nuts and bolts of how you apply. So I'm going to do a little demo on Naviance. So I'm hoping all of you haven't forgotten what Naviance looks like. We know it's been a while, but this is probably like messages we want you to hear today. This is the how do I apply. How do I send my transcripts? How do I request my letters of rec? And how do I utilize the tools via Naviance as well? So on the screen, I have my Naviance account up. This is just a demo account, so none of the data in here is from a student. So on the top, I just want a quick reference to my planner and the tasks. So last year, we tried to be really purposeful in giving all of you as juniors then a lot of tools and resources to start your college planning, to manage applications, to do so much. And all that is still there for you. We know not everybody is ready at that exact time for that process, but it's all still there, just under my planner and tasks. So on Naviance, in the very top, we see these different components: home, colleges, careers, about me. Colleges is really where we're going to focus today. So I'm going to go to colleges and colleges home. Oh, I'm going to extend my session because I don't want to log out. Or I'm going to log out and log back in. Perfect. Okay. So I'm going to go to the colleges home. And really, defining your fit. If none of you have used Naviance too much yet, or if you've forgotten, these are great tools to do your search. Focus over here on the colleges I'm thinking about and colleges I'm applying to. So if I'm a senior, there are a few different ways that I request my transcript being sent to schools. The first one could be colleges I'm thinking about. Maybe last year or as a sophomore, I started adding schools that I'm thinking about. And maybe I want to choose one of these schools on here to send transcripts. So maybe UW-La Crosse. What I'm going to do here for colleges I'm thinking about is select the college on my list, and then I'm just going to actually move it to the application list. And then I'm actually going to fill out these steps. So you need to know what the deadline is you're applying for. And remember, we kind of talked about this before: rolling deadlines, early action, early decision, and then how you're going to submit your application. It might say institutional, it might say Common App. You're going to select the way you do it. And if you've already sent your application, you're also going to do that and check that. You'll click Add and Request Transcripts, and then you are going to ask to just have your initial transcript sent. That's going to have your 9th through 11th grade grades on it. It will also show just what courses you're going to be taking first semester of senior year. I'm going to hit Request and Finish. It automatically brings me to the colleges I'm applying to part. So I'm going to click back up to the front homepage of Naviance, and you see under Favorites, it has a lot of the things right now. Colleges I'm thinking about, colleges I'm applying to. Colleges I'm applying to, it shows every school that you've requested transcripts to be sent from. This is the only way. So if you're a hybrid student, if you're an EVA student, we need you to use this process to request your transcripts being sent. We don't do any more paper requests, email requests. We need you to do it through here. We send everything, your teacher letters of rec, your school profile, your transcripts, all through Naviance. So another way to add your transcripts would be directly just clicking this add sign here. Here, you would just type in the school you want to send things to. So I could say, maybe I want to do University of Minnesota Twin Cities campus. Maybe I'm looking at the early action deadline, and I'm not sure yet how I want to send. Or maybe I'm like, okay, I'm doing the Common App, but I haven't finished the Common App yet. So I'm going to leave this unchecked. I'm going to add that request, click Initial, Request and Finish, and now it's here as well. All right. Now notice in this little computer monitor, it also shows you that CA means Common App. That blank is just going to refer to kind of more of an institutional app. One thing that Mr. Hackbarth said right before this related to the Common App was matching accounts. So you'll notice I have this on the top of my screen where colleges are applying to. Every student who applies via the Common App needs to match your Naviance and your Common App account. What that means is you're going to click Match Accounts, and you're actually going to type in the email address you use with your Common App and your date of birth. All right. These have to be identical to what you have in your Common App. What you'll do then is hit Match Accounts. Now, if you haven't started a Common App yet, you can't match your account. You're first going to have to go into your Common App and complete your FERPA. We do have some information and some videos on our website around how to do that, as well as hyperlinked in this video. Okay. The last thing I want to show you real quick is under the Colleges tab, you go to Apply to College, and you'll also see there's a Letter of Recommendation area. Shortly, we're going to talk about letters of recommendation. In Naviance, this is actually how you're going to request your teacher letter of rec. Now, what would happen first is obviously you have to have a conversation with that teacher, and you want to make sure that your college requires that letter of rec. But what you're going to do is add request. You're going to select a teacher from the drop-down box. Maybe I had Mr. Amborn as the English teacher, and we had talked. And you choose schools that you want it sent to. You'll even see here, 0 required, 0 required, 1 allowed. And you'll select which school you want Mr. Amborn's to go to. Maybe you want it to go to all your schools. You'll click here that all current and future, and then maybe just write a nice message. Thanks, Mr. Amborn. Really appreciated working with you in pre-AP10 or whatever class or opportunity you had to work with them. And then you'll hit submit. So that's kind of it for the demo part. So if we want to go back to the PowerPoint, Mr. Hackbarth, you'll see that kind of the slides that we have on here are really screenshots and written steps of what I just spoke through. Also, we have that how to get it done document that Mr. Hackbarth referenced that walks you through this as well. So we have a lot of different ways to do this. So we can kind of flip through the next couple slides, Ms. P. Yep, and then I think it's you.
It is. Hi again. Thanks, Mr. Thanks, Mr. Johnson, for doing all of that too. So the next one is the application fee waivers. So students on free and reduced lunch program are eligible for a test waiver. Forms are available through Naviance, which Mr. Johnson just went through very thoroughly, or with us in the council. You should talk with us to discuss your eligibility. And if you know that you are in need of any financial help, again, please just utilize us for supports and resources. We'll help you get through all of it. The next part, we were talking about recommendations, and I believe that this is Mr. Hicks.
Before I talk about recommendations, I want to just go back to the topic where I was discussing in regards to testing. One thing I kind of forgot to mention is the test coming up. There are 2 tests coming up at national sites for ACT. There's a September test, and then there is the October test. I just want to let everyone know that if you have a desire to take either one of those, I've been informed that there are seats available for both of those tests. So even the September test, which is coming up in a couple of weeks, there's a late fee registration, but if you so desire to take it, even Edina does have some spaces available. So you could still register and get in here. The same thing holds true with the October test. So with that being said, I'm going to move forward and talk a little bit about recommendations, specifically the recommendations about with counselors. First and foremost, every counselor is willing to write letters of for their students. However, with that being said, we only want to write letters for students that need them. And I'm emphasizing need because that we don't want to be writing recommendations for students that are applying to schools that have no desire. There are schools out there that you do not need recommendations for. It's going to be your responsibility to some extent is to review over on the web pages of the schools or on the Common App. If they have a secondary school report and they're requesting that they need a counselor recommendation, then it is your responsibility to talk to your counselor and ask them for a recommendation. I'm sure each and every one of us will ask you to fill out this questionnaire. It's hyperlinked here on the presentation, but it is a form that we need everybody to fill out and return back to their counselor. And I'm speaking just for myself, obviously, because I'm a new counselor. For the students that I'm working with here, in order for me to write a letter of recommendation, it is imperative that you fill this out in detail. Just because that I don't know you, I'm going to be talking with you eventually, but this questionnaire is so important and significant. A couple other things, we do offer an optional questionnaire. I know historically that most of the counselors really think that this is helpful. Don't worry, students, if your parent fills it out, they're not going to write bad things about you. Actually, it's going to be the other way around. It's kind of a brag sheet, which is great because that as a counselor, we're getting a different perspective instead of just one coming from you. So any little bit of information and more information that we have, the more inclusive their recommendation will be. The other thing we want to mention is that if you are getting a recommendation that is a non-teacher, even a non-EHS, somebody that works here in the building, it is going to be your responsibility to not only request from them, but to get them to do the recommendation and send it out to those particular schools that you want. It's not, we can't control any of that. So if you're, let's say, for instance, if you're an athlete and you want a coach that's, doesn't work in the building and you're interested in having them write a letter of recommendation, or in the case being, if there was somebody that's outside, maybe that there's a retired teacher or a teacher that's moved on, you might want to contact them and have them write a letter of recommendation. Again, it's going to be your responsibility, and let them know that it is sent from them to the institutions that you want to. So that's just pertaining a little bit about the counselor recommendation. The teacher recommendations, I believe, is Mr. Johnson. Take it away.
Yeah. So just kind of reiterating, like, so much of this is hyperlinked. So when you see these, it is clickable, and we have a lot of great videos that walk you through kind of what I demoed and the process. They're really short, they're simple, they're 3 to 5 minutes in general, so please utilize those. So if we go to the next slide and talk about teacher letters of rec. Again, you are going to request them through Naviance, through that kind of apply to college tab that I showed you on there. The most important thing we want you to know is that you're responsible for the communication with your teacher, as far as asking them, as far as letting them know too, if it's a Common App school and which schools you want your letter for. We really want you to make sure that your college requires a letter. your teachers, your counselors, we all want to support you in this. We just want to make sure that it's actually going to essentially make a difference. Like Mr. Hicks said, there are a lot of schools out there that have different ways of looking at the admissions process and viewing letters of rec. And there's even a couple out there that are a little infamous in our community of, not wanting them and maybe just disposing of them because they don't ask nor allow any, but students still try to send them. Letters of rec, reference our videos if you're wondering how. Please email, talk to your teachers. Every teacher has their process for that too. If they ask you to fill out an additional form, kind of information sheet, we do have that sheet on the counseling website in the class of 2021's folder. So next is about deadlines. Really need you to know that we want to support you. There's also close to 700 of you, and we're asking you to request things at least 3 weeks in advance. I think a lot of times 3 weeks is pretty easy to do, and you could maybe even do it sooner, and we appreciate that when you do. It takes us 3 weeks to process everything. We're sending transcripts, school profiles, filling out reports, writing letters of recommendation. So we need at least 3 weeks, especially for that letter of rec and the transcript part. So for example, if you're applying for a November 1 deadline, we ask you to complete that Naviance transcript request and give us our recommendation packet if we need to write one by October 11th. So all the dates are on this chart here. And remember too, there are breaks. So when we have the January 1 deadline, we do have to factor in that break as well. And I'm trying to think, moving on, I think Ms. P, you have the next slide.
All right, thanks again. So these are just some common student errors that happen. So the first one would be writing down the wrong university or college name in the essay. That's kind of a big deal. You might want to know where you're going and who you're writing this for. Grammatical errors, have somebody review one of these, have your parents read over it, or even read it out loud to yourself so you can see and hear what you're writing and saying. Some students did not request a letter of rec in Naviance, or maybe they didn't do it in time. Forgetting to request transcripts from Naviance, maybe forgetting to send test scores from ACT and SAT, and again, remember that's your responsibility to do so, or missing deadlines, priority scholarships. So if ever you needed to focus on deadlines, it would be this year. So really hone in on those times, give us those 3 weeks for your letters of rec, really pay attention to each of these so that everything goes smoothly for you and as successfully as possible, because we know this is a really challenging time, stressful time, and so we want to make this process as easy as we can. The next part is more colleges are allowing you to self-report your courses and grades. So for example, the U of M requires students to self-report, which can be great because then you're not time bound and you can send your transcripts yourself rather than having us do it. But students, you need to check your transcripts on your student portal, and please be sure that you are sending an accurate report, because colleges will admit you before we send the official transcript. But if you embellish your grades, they do have the ability to deny your admissions even in the summer. So again, just be truthful and then send them yourself too, which is great. Your transcript find on campus. So step 1, look over your transcript. Ensure correct grades, PSEO, summer classes. Sometimes there's a little error, or maybe we didn't get a summer course on your transcript. So again, just don't be afraid to email us and say, hey, can you please update this? This is a big deal. So you want to make sure that everything that you've worked hard for is shown on your transcript. Step 2, use college apps, course history, and your GPA. And then step 3, not official request your official transcripts through us. So when you see your transcript, again, it's not official. So you want to ask one of our administrative assistants, either Nancy Knudsen or Samantha O'Donnell, to help you out and send those. And again, you must use Naviance. I know Mr. Hackbarth walked through a lot of that, but again, we're not leaving you just to be on your own. So make sure that you do ask us if you need any help and direction.
All right, people, we're almost at the end. Now I want to talk about money. Sorry, coffee's kicking in. First, I want to talk about how to find something with seniors. What I find happens a lot is students get through the application process, and then all of a sudden it's like April, May, June, and they're like, oh yeah, scholarships. I need to fund my college experience. So now is the time that you can start looking for scholarships. Honestly, that time has started a while ago. On our Naviance platform, if you click on the colleges tab and scroll down, we have a list of a fairly robust list of scholarships that you can search for. Additionally, in the spring of your senior year, we will do our Edina local scholarship program where outside organizations come, and we have one kind of school-based application where you can submit and hopefully get some money to fund your college experience. Okay, now I want to talk about FAFSA. The FAFSA stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. I really recommend that every student should fill out the FAFSA. It opens up October 1st, and this year they'll be using your family's 2019 tax return or tax information. There are several types of money that can come from filling out the FAFSA. One would be grants, and that's money you don't have to pay back. Loans, so the federal government offers lower interest and loans with typically fairly flexible repayment options. Some students can find themselves qualified for loans through the FAFSA. And the other one that I think is worth it, which makes it worth it for every students, can find themselves eligible for work study funds. Work study funds, there's a pool of money that campuses can access to get you an on-campus job where you're a student first, but you're still a worker, so you get paid to work, but they're really flexible. I had a work study job all throughout my undergrad when I went to the University of Minnesota. I worked in the School of Music at the University of Minnesota, and actually it's where I met my wife, so I always tell the story. Fill out your FAFSA, it brings people together. The other thing that I wanted to just point out is there's something called the CSS profile. Around 230 schools will have this additional financial aid document. It can be kind of extensive to do. Just be aware as you're looking at your schools, you might see the CSS profile pop up as well. I already talked about all that. So again, you can be eligible for grants, work study, or loans through the FAFSA. Okay, we're almost there, people. So I just want to quick go over some final resources that we've got available for you. There's a bunch of online resources in this kind of virtual arena that we're in. We're trying to make as much accessible for you when you're wearing your pajamas laying in bed as possible, since being face-to-face is just more challenging this year than ever before. So first, we've got these college that are facilitated through Naviance. They're all virtual. Also on college websites, colleges have really been kind of bolstering their online offerings so that students can kind of get a feel for what a campus feels like in an event where they can't, you can't get to a campus to see it before you apply. In the chat, while we've been doing this live session, I shared a link to our class of 2021 page on our website. It is robust. It has all of this stuff there. I really encourage you to click around. Miss Nikki shared earlier on that you can access all of our previous advisory lessons through the My Tasks tab on Naviance. And then lastly, I myself and another counselor, we run our counseling Instagram page and our counseling Twitter page. Smash that subscribe at Edina Counselors. We would love to have you folks on. I shared a counselor colleague who's not on the video texted me to let me know that there's an issue with the chat. So unfortunately, we're not going to be able to do our questions and answer session today. However, we're coming up on 50 minutes of video, so I'm sure everyone. We appreciate your time. And we look forward to supporting you all as you navigate your senior year. Be healthy, be safe, and enjoy your last week of summer, people. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.